All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Can we please have a roll call?
Ms. Bernstein? Ms. Christian?
Here.
Mr. Globinger?
Here.
Ms. Oliver?
Here.
Ms. Unical?
Here.
Ms. Shu?
Here.
Ms. Young?
Yeah, here.
Okay, we have a quorum. First item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Before we move forward, is there anything on the consent agenda anyone would like to ask be removed and placed onto the regular agenda? Seeing and hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Jamie. Can we please have a roll call?
Ms. Christian?
Yes.
Mr. Globinger?
Yes.
Ms. Oliver?
Yes.
Ms. Unical?
Yes.
Ms. Shu?
Yes.
Ms. Young?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. Consent agenda is approved. Next item on the agenda is the audit presentation with Ed Tracy from Selden Fox. And would you like to start, or do you want Kate to introduce you?
It's fine, I can start.
Everyone but Stacy has met Ed previously, and so he is, of course, coming in as our auditor to present the audit that you guys all received in your board packet, and has worked very closely with Anna over the last several months to get everything ready.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here tonight, and thank you for having Selden Fox perform your audit this year. As Kate mentioned, we've done it for the last few years, and we always appreciate the cooperation we get from Kate, Anna, and the rest of the staff here at the library. I believe you received three different documents from us in your packet, and I was kind of going to try to touch on each one of them in the order that I saw them on, that they were included within the packet. So the first was a letter addressed to the board it was untitled. There was no title to this letter. And this is what's called our management letter. It's a letter where we provide if there's recommendations we see for improvements to internal controls, we provide them in there. We also kind of bring to your attention some other matters which we feel are of benefit to you. So I mentioned internal controls, and as part of our audit, we will take a look at internal controls. We'll walk through some transactions to document our understanding of the controls. We have memos in our files on the control processes. We want to make sure that those memos are accurate and that the controls as represented to us are being followed. So we did that. We could also opt to perform additional tests of controls if we wanted to rely on those controls to reduce our other procedures, but it's really, in this instance, it's more efficient to perform what we call extended substantive procedures. So we don't perform additional tests of controls, but I will say that as a result of our walkthroughs and our discussions with Anna, we feel like the control structure is in place and operating. We didn't see anything where there was a gap or a weakness in the control that we felt we needed to bring to your attention. So when you look at that management letter, what it really is just kind of some a heads up on some upcoming standards that in the accounting, governmental accounting, that will become effective. They've been issued, but they're not yet effective, so we want to make you aware of them, and so that you guys can take a look at them and determine their applicability to the library. The second document in your package was a letter entitled "Communications with Those Charged with Governance," and this is a kind of a letter required by our standards body. We're required to address specific topics in the audit kind of about the audit process. Our responsibilities, your responsibilities, and really, I think the big thing about this letter is if there's any issues with our audit, whether we're not getting cooperation from management, if there's disagreements in the accounting treatments or something, we have to bring that to your attention in this letter. So that's, I think, in my mind, that's the real purpose behind the letter. And if we don't have those disagreements, then the letter is frankly pretty boilerplate. And that happened to be the case this year. We really didn't have any issues. We certainly got cooperation from everyone here, and there weren't any disagreements as it related to any of the any accounting treatment. So the letter's fairly boilerplate. There is some exhibits attached to those letters for adjustments that we made during the audit. We did make 5 adjustments. One comes from the village auditors as it relates to the IMRF and the net pension liability, because you're part of the village's, you're with the village at IMRF. So we get that from the village auditors, and we take a look at that. We audit that. So that's not one that could be done ahead of time. And a couple of the other ones related to fixed assets were really done in conjunction with management. So even though there were 5 there, I mean, most of those, maybe one was one that could have been done before we got here, so. There's also a second exhibit with a reclassification entry, and this isn't really an adjustment, it's more for report presentation purposes for us. But we just make you aware that it doesn't have any P&L effect. And then the last exhibit is, there's what's called their uncorrected adjustments. So if there's adjustments that are immaterial, we look at things from a materiality level. And so if there's adjustments that are below that materiality level, that we identify in our procedures, we'll kind of accumulate those separate lists. And if they stay below that materiality level, we'll generally pass on recording them. These are usually transactions like that would then get recorded in the next period. So it's not like they're not getting recorded. It's just more of a timing thing. So there's only one past adjustment that was on that list. So the third document itself is the audit report itself. It's, the major report. It begins with our independent auditors report, which is the first few pages, and that's an unmodified opinion. So that's what that is the highest form of assurance that we can give that the financial statements that file are fairly presented in accordance with the governmental accounting practices. The next section is a management discussion and analysis section, and that's just kind of a narrative overview of the financial year. It addresses specific topics. It provides some comparative information. So it's just, if you're just looking for a brief summary, you can go to the management discussion and analysis. The financial statements then file, and there's 2 sets of financial statements within the audit. There's what's called government-wide financial statements, and then there's fund financial statements. Now, government-wide financial statements are the first 2 statements that are on pages 9 and 10 of your report. They're more of a long-term focus. So, the balance sheet includes like fixed assets. It includes long-term debt, net pension asset or liability, OPEB, other post-employment liability. So these are things that aren't not generally recognized within the fund financial statements. And what you look at on a monthly basis, that's the fund financial statements. It's closer to a cash basis, not cash exactly, but closer. It's a more current focus. So there's these 2 sets of financial statements, and there's reconciliations in the report to kind of show the differences. Just a couple highlights from the fund financial statements themselves. Cash and investments increased by about $1 million from the prior year. And you also paid down about $375,000 of debt, which is reflected as an expense in the fund financial statements, but it's like a reduction of a liability in the government-wide financial statements. But so even though you're even having to pay down that principal, you still generate a healthy cash flow this year. Also this year, new in the within the liability section, there's a liability for the funds that you've collected on behalf of the Illinois Library Presents. So you're kind of been taking in funds for that organization and kind of also the watchdog of those funds. But they're not running through your revenue and expense because it's really a separate organization. So there's just like a liability account that's set up where the money comes in and out of. And so that's included within your liability section and it's part of your payables as an amount due to this ILP organization. Just some highlights, fund highlights. The general fund had a positive bottom line of about 1.3 million before transfers out were made. A small transfer was made to the debt service fund to cover any shortfalls there. And then about 1.3 million was transferred to the capital improvements fund to kind of accumulate those resources for future improvements. Revenues in the general fund were slightly over budget, of 33,000 over a budget of 7.8 million, so pretty much right on budget. Expenses were about 8% under budget in the general fund. Biggest area of savings there versus budget were in the salaries and employee benefits, which was about 400,000 under budget. You also closed out the construction fund. There was a construction fund and a capital projects fund. The existing fund balance was closed out and moved into the other capital projects from this capital improvements fund. So you kind of consolidated everything into that one capital improvements fund. And lastly, the library participates in the IMRF pension plan, as I mentioned before, through the village. And you contribute an annual amount each year as required by the plan. And that money accumulates, investments are held at IRF, accumulates earnings and is used to pay benefits. And you, you compare that amount on hand to what the expected benefits that have been earned to date that will be paid out over future. And you either recognize an asset or a liability based on whether what's on hand is more than what's projected to be needed at this point. And this year, you're in an asset position, of about, I want to say about 108%, 109%. So you're 109% funded. So, and that's common for pretty much everyone in IRF these days. Everyone's for the most part overfunded. So that should lead to some lower contribution requirements in the near future. That can fluctuate obviously as markets fluctuate and investment returns. But fortunately, this recent kind of downturn in the market isn't going to immediately affect you because they kind of smooth that stuff out over a 5-year period. They kind of those earnings fluctuations. So you should expect to see, I think, some lower contribution rates in the next year or two.
Quick question. You mentioned the Illinois Library Presents.
Mhm.
Is that in a segregated account?
In the general ledger, it is in a separate account. There's separate, like a due to Illinois Libraries account where the money's kind of kept in the report. It's included within the tables and but it's not a separate line item on the audit report itself, but within your own book.
You have a question, Jay?
That was it.
Oh, okay. I thought there might have been a follow-up question.
Yeah.
No, it's tracked separately and we, that's one of the adjustments that Ann and I kind of worked through it during the audit. As the best approach, because it's really not a revenue or expense of Northbrook's library, so it runs through that liability account. I want to thank Anna for all her help, and Kate. I thought they all went smoothly, and we certainly appreciate that. And it was a strong year for the library, I thought, overall. And I can't find a place to park tonight, so you guys must be doing.
Sorry about that, but yay.
Were there any other questions for Ed?
Thank you very much.
Um,
Thank you.
Is there a motion to accept the fiscal year 22 audit as presented?
To accept the
Thank you.
as presented.
Thank you, Maura. Is there a second? Thank you, Stacy. Could we please have a roll call?
Ms. Christian?
Yes.
Mr. Clovenger?
Yes.
Ms. Oliver?
Yes.
Ms. Unical?
Yes.
Ms. Shu?
Yes.
Ms. Young?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. Ed, thank you.
Thank you.
In terms of the final and the letters, do we have anything that you'll be sending to us for signature?
We already did that, sent to Kate and Anna for a signature, so I think we're
good?
set. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody inside?
Yeah, no, you signed it the other day.
It was probably
You signed it on Monday.
weeks ago.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, someone signed your name.
no, she did. I did not take
Sure,
the
Anna
electronic
brought it,
signature.
and I did, and I
When did we have that meeting? The three of us? Was it last Friday? Okay.
It was a big weekend apparently.
There was a lot of Halloween costume making.
It was, that's right. Thank you. Sure, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is public comments. We have any public who would like to make comments?
Myself. I can introduce you. All right, Meryl Dancy is our, well, not so new anymore, but our new-ish Friends of the Library Board President. And as I mentioned last month, she is coming because it is Friends of the Library Week.
This week.
To talk to all of you.
So among other things, the National Friends of the Library Week is focused on friend raising and increasing the number of people in the community that support the Friends. And I was actually surprised to find that none of our trustees are members of the Friends. So I'm just going to leave this material with you. This is not a high pressure campaign. However, I do have your names. Well, I don't know where you live, but this is a brochure that we've had for quite some time. We're going to use them until they're done, and then at that point, we will use some of our funds to refresh that. In case you're interested, I have remittance envelopes right here. You may drop this off right in the bookshop. I don't know if you've recently been in our bookshop, but it's now open all of the hours of the library. And inside there is an unattended donation box. And so you can slip that in there along with any money that you choose to donate for book purchases. And I also have a small copy of our Friends Facts, which is about who we are, what we do, how we contribute to the library, and how one can support the Friends, become a member of the Friends, and support what we do. This week, Tuesday night, we had a showing of the movie Dune, the 2021 movie for members, because we had never had, to my knowledge, anything for the members. And I said, well, what do I get? Well, you got an invitation to see a members only showing of this movie. And Saturday, we are presenting local author and sports journalist Melissa Isaacson, who is also celebrating the 50th anniversary of Title IX. She's been active, and her family been active in Northbrook for quite some time. She is an author and on the faculty at Northwestern, and should be a really interesting program. We are presenting that to the community. And another event deferred to next week because of conference attendance. We will be treating the staff of the library during Tuesday next week with treats and snacks throughout the day for the various shifts to show our appreciation for the staff who has done wonderful things and really gone over and above during the pandemic and getting the library basically reopened. So, so those are some of the things we do. We sponsor films, concerts, book discussions, chair yoga, a lot of the programs that are really the icing on the cake for the library, and that help make our library the treasure that it is. And I know you know that it is, because you wouldn't be here if you didn't think so. Do you have any questions for me or about the Friends of the Library?
I do think that we have some of the applications and the envelopes in our new folder.
Okay, good. So it's even more handy. And you can go online. We really did a lot this past year to move the organization forward, including the unattended donation box, meaning that the book club is available for anyone at any time the library is open, and that has been very popular. In addition, we responded to demand for people joining or renewing online. And so with Anna's help, we set that up last winter, so you can explore that as well.
Kelly and I can vouch that it's very convenient to renew that way.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for everything that you and the Friends do for the library. I know we appreciate it, and there are many, many times over the years that there have been wonderful donations by the Friends to support projects and various upgrades to the library, and improvements, so thank you so much.
Yes, and we don't just initiate projects. We respond to the library administration. So we might say, do you have anything on your wish list? And we also fund the regular programs month to month. So if you have any comments that you want to make about how Friends funds are spent, you can talk to Kate or Kelly, and they can describe their process for deciding what our priorities, what their priorities are for disbursements from the Friends.
And on
Would you like me to stay?
average, the Friends donate typically between $30,000 and $40,000 a year between programs and special projects. Like, for instance, the spotlight display, I want to call it furniture, but it isn't, millwork, if you will, display piece. The Friends donated the money for that, so there's a nice little plaque. And the lift, I think that probably no one here needs, but that many of our patrons that come to the auditorium use to get down into the auditorium.
And we're gonna try to have one of our directors come at least every other month to the trustees meeting. Just to make sure that we address any questions or concerns that you might have.
That's great. Well, thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
Anybody have any questions, comments?
Thanks, Meryl.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome to stay, but you do not have to. I know you've had a very busy week and it's not over yet.
Yeah, we're setting up for our book sale tomorrow. If you want the best selection, come early. Great bargain. Start your shopping early for the holidays. Anything else? No.
Thanks, Meryl.
All right.
Thank you. See you soon.
All right, Kate, your report is up.
All right, so just a couple reminders. One, we do have our EDI training on Saturday, starting at 9:30. According to Jennifer, everyone has their lunch order in, so no one will starve. So few. We are gonna be meeting right here in Civic. It is because it is, even though it's a training, we still have to treat it as a board meeting. So Jay will have to do like the opening. I will attempt to replicate Jennifer's work and do the roll call, but, and Rashida has said, like, she will kind of, like, if the board wants to do a shorter lunch, get out earlier, if, do a working lunch, or take the time to process. It will be entirely up to you guys what, how you'd like it to progress. And Kelly and Anna and I will be here as well to assist and also listen and hopefully learn some stuff as well.
Starting at 9:30, right?
Starting at 9:30.
So,
9:30.
and we're doing the lunch is here, but that's in addition to the training. Is that correct? I guess, so is it,
It's set for 9:30 to 3:30. There's
Okay.
5 hours of training. So we set aside an hour for lunch, but
Okay.
we don't, like, it's entirely up to you guys if you want to do that, or if, we could pause the meeting, have the lunch and then come back, or it can be get lunches and continue. So whatever everyone wants on Saturday.
my preference would be to condense the time as much as possible myself, but that's,
I'm here for whatever you guys need, so it's entirely up.
Well, it's really up to the consultants, I would
That
think. I mean,
too,
They're the
that
ones who
too.
kind of are setting the agendas. So.
They are. So, so Rashida said she would ask the board and kind of take her direction for what the board would like to do. So,
Oh, you're asking for input?
I mean, we can. She has said she would on Saturday, kind of gauge the room, like, hey, do you guys want to keep going? Do you want to pause? So she would
Okay.
decide that. I'm happy to provide feedback to her now, but
No, are you talking solely about lunch or about the whole day?
the whole day, she said she would kind of see, well, see what, you wanted in terms of the lunch piece.
Can we decide that when we see?
Yep.
How
Yeah.
the time is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
100%. I was just letting you know that there's flexibility if wanted.
Now, there are periodic breaks between starting lunch and finishing?
There's no
would
bad
assume
breaks. Sit in
No
this room
breaks,
for
no
6
No, I
hours.
mean, like,
Yeah.
come on, we've all been to like,
Yeah, it's really hard.
seminars or something where, they're very well, you have the agenda, got an hour and a half, 10-minute break,
Yeah.
hour and a half, lunch, hour and a half, 10-minute break. mean,
I
you know,
think
you
it
know
was
what
in
I'm
the
talking about.
invite.
So it's, from what I spoke with Rashida, it's a little bit more organic. It sounds like it'll be based upon kind of how things are flowing with the training, but I'm sure there will be breaks
So
because
if you
it's hard
click
to
on there,
absorb that amount of
Yeah,
information.
but it
for,
doesn't have
like
like
3 straight hour.
because there are no breaks.
So
But he's saying he wants a
Wait,
break.
but we can decide, like, usually in trainings like this, it'd be
Yeah,
like,
to
okay,
take
this
the
is a good
rubric,
time to
go
take
to
a
the
break.
back.
Everyone want a break, and then we take a break. We don't need to like write them in stone now. Right? Can I ask a question and then just double check? We did not get anything to review in advance, correct?
correct,
Okay,
there
thank
is
you.
no packet or anything.
No.
At the risk of being the only one who didn't read it, I did not see anything.
No,
Just say
there.
lunch menu, Abby.
Okay, you were so obsessed with my lunch order. It's a Mediterranean sandwich. No cheese, no onion.
Um,
That's what I ordered. I know, a lot of people don't like
Oh,
onions
you
here. I
stole
noticed
someone
it.
else's order.
No, because she had cheese in mine. didn't
No,
I?
mine doesn't have cheese either.
Oh, then we're
cheese.
just.
guess we don't have to worry about
Yeah.
if they get mixed up. So, a couple other things unrelated to the Saturday training, unless there are any other questions on that. Nothing like that. Okay, the village did issue, an invitation to the board for the family dinner.
Oh, yeah.
And I did give them your individual emails, but they did send it to the all over board
When
that
are we
was
supposed to
confusing.
respond to that?
by October 28th.
They they sent me a reminder already. I'm like, these people don't know deadlines. Deadline is the 28th now. It's not that time.
Yeah.
The second one too,
Yeah, they did.
Oh, they did.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
I got a
Good.
second one and I
second
was
one
like,
too.
wait a minute, I was
Thought it,
confusing.
I know. Yeah, I was
Okay,
like, did I
good.
not
Because when I saw
respond?
that,
What
I'm
I
like,
know.
Because I
It
sent
should be
it to the
pretty clear
board.
that everyone could bring a guest. We're still allowed to bring a guest, right?
Oh, are we?
Yes, that was select one or one.
Okay.
yes, yes.
Interesting.
And
And
is it food again, or is this something different?
I believe it's food, according to Sam. It's the same format as previous times, so I'm gonna assume that they're gonna have it's kind of like, think of like open house where there's little food stations throughout Village Hall that people stop at and get food.
Who's going? Confirm.
I'll be there.
I usually try to go.
I'm sort of It's right before we take a big trip and I'm sort of
On the
on a
fence.
sort of soft quarantining, only doing,
Nice, only the necessary.
yes.
So I just wanted to remind everyone, make sure everyone saw that, and if you'd like to attend, certainly, that would be wonderful. And then I'm just gonna be taking up a couple days at the beginning of November. I forgot to actually put that into the report. And then I also wanted to mention, that Kelly and I had a lovely meeting with the Park District last week, 2 weeks ago. Time is very hard during a conference week, because ILA was this week, so my brain is, as you saw, a little bit mushy, but that is, something we've been trying to get on the books for a while. We both do things together, but we wanted to make it a little bit more streamlined and look for other opportunities and ways for us to connect and partner. So we came up with a long list of possibilities, and are going to be working on ways to do more collaboration, between the two different units of local government. So we're very excited, to work with them and hopefully simplify some of the things that they do, and that we do, to make it easier. Because right now we have a lot of people there that talk to a lot of different people here and vice versa. So we're trying to also simplify some of that as well. So, and then that was all I had, unless anyone has any questions on anything from my report.
Yeah, civic room upgrades in the bar.
Yes,
So-
I'm gonna let Kelly talk about this, because she has been working on seeing the possibilities of whether we can do this.
The bar is a test. So we had it demonstrated this afternoon.
It's the one right.
It works really nicely, but probably not for what we want to do in this room, so don't get too attached. But we are looking into installing speakers and microphones in the ceiling, as well as 2 cameras, in order to be able to do live stream board meetings, hybrid book discussions, and hoping to reorientate the room so we could also do lecture programs in here and be able to have people in person as well as watching virtually at the same time. So that's what we've been looking into.
Okay, but reorient, I mean, getting rid of this table and doing something different or?
Screen on that wall, and so yes, one of the things would be, I know you're the only one that is here now, that I'm just realizing that was here when we repurposed this, because this was here before, right? And then it was redone for the
Well,
twenty.
this is a new table.
Oh, it is a new.
It's in the same shape as the old table, but this is the new table.
Okay.
We didn't have any
So-
electrical.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I thought it was repurposed from one before the 2015. And so yes, it would mean doing that. And the goal is also to have kind of a Zoom room for patrons that want to use it.
Where would the cameras be? Where would the board be at meetings?
So, the monitor would move here. We're looking at doing a U shape for the board meetings, and there would be a camera, sort of like where the camera is tonight, underneath the monitor for board meeting. And then we would have another camera mounted on this side of the room, so that if it was a lecture, we could capture the presenter and rather than the audience for lecture programs.
It's usually, but the board be looking, sitting that way, facing that way with the
You
camera.
face this way, face the camera in a U shape,
Okay, so then we would be facing,
that camera.
no, I'm thinking the monitor.
Yeah.
Facing the monitor.
Yeah.
Yeah. In camera, right?
Right.
Feels like,
I was just gonna say, encourage some aesthetic appeal, like maybe book jackets framed or children's artwork, or it could just easily come off the walls if we needed, but it's very aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
You've got all these book jackets that are just marvelous.
I feel like the room goes longer this way though, so like if we're in a U shape, are we really using the full, it'd be like a long U, right?
It wouldn't be a permanent table.
Okay. So you could
We would
Configure it.
make the room more flexible. Right now, the room is pretty limited in what we can utilize it for, because this table obviously doesn't move. By removing this and doing more like we would in our other meeting rooms with movable tables, we could set it up that way, but then it could also be set up with just rows of chairs for a lecture and so it would give us greater flexibility with how we can use the room. And while we haven't, our meeting room bookings are definitely continuing to pick up. They're not completely at the levels they were pre-pandemic. I think part of that is because we just have more study rooms now, but we are definitely seeing that usage continuing to climb. So having this room be available for different uses that currently it can't really be used for would be really
Does the
beneficial.
Pollock room have the Zoom capabilities that you're talking about, or?
It does not.
Because that room is already multi-purpose, so, I mean, is there a reason that we're focusing on this room as opposed to that room for those? That use?
Kelly and Anna had been looking at all of the possibilities, and I can't remember the details for Pollock, so I'm gonna.
One
ask
of the
them.
reasons is we're asking the Civic Foundation for a grant to fund the project, and this is the civic room, so that was part of it. Also, just the size of it, we wanted to start with a lower cost project and see how it goes. see how demand for hybrid and virtual programming events and meetings evolves as we move out of the pandemic phase. So we thought starting with a smaller room would be plenty for the next year or so. And then if demand continues to be high, we can look at expanding into the bigger rooms, which would be more costly projects.
I was gonna say, you'd have to get a lot more cameras in that room,
Mhm.
a lot of angles and stuff. So this, the intent is to be like a hybrid room.
Correct.
So if we get rid of this table, when you've got electrical and all the interfacing built into the table, how's that gonna work?
We would be adding a rack for computer, but everything else would just go into a wall panel. So depending on where the monitor is, if it moves over there, there'd be a panel here as well as a control panel on this wall.
But you mean for people like plugging in their computers and stuff?
I mean, yeah, we've got, you know.
It would still be on the ground, so your table, you could just plug it into the ground, is that what you mean?
No, I'm just curious, because we have everything into the table as opposed to into the ground right now. The ground here is cement, correct?
I believe so, yes,
If you're
but
gonna take it out, you're gonna have to.
don't really use the HDMI or VGA anymore because we have the barcode system. So you could just plug in the dongle. Yeah, thank you. I always want to say boondoggle. That's not a thing. And so that can be plugged into any computer anywhere in the space.
So you're saying that the technology in the table is outdated and
It
doesn't
is.
be needed?
Getting there. Yeah, I mean, you could still use it, but we have more simpler, easier to use and more mobile technology. Jan, Civic, they had said, yes, we want to do projects, so we shall see what they say as well. So,
Notice that there is a divide here. This has been cut. Or is it 2 pieces, 3 pieces? Is there any way to reconfigure?
The table was too big to make as one piece, Barbara, so they had to make it in two.
I don't think you would be able to.
the columns underneath are like, I forgot how, I remember they're really in the floor. Is cement in them? No, I'm sorry, what? How did they put the underneath legs?
They're just posts. They're not in the floor, they're just posts.
Yeah, okay. I can't remember. I wasn't, I don't. It's right after this.
Yeah, you have to support the weight of this thing.
Yeah.
It's a good point.
Any other questions for Kate on the report? Okay. Next member is board member reports. Does anybody have anything to report in terms of recent activities? Anybody go to ILA? Getting lots of shaking heads. All right. We'll move on.
Did have my interview.
Was that last night?
That was, yes. Wednesday night.
Stacy and I were Monday.
Oh, okay.
And Sharon is not going through the process, so she will be finishing up her
Oh.
tenure in April.
Oh, no.
And so I guess there's a new person that they're interviewing,
Okay.
from what I was told.
What are the next steps? Like, is there like a town hall? Is it in person, you know?
So they weren't exactly, I mean, I don't know if Stacy or Laura, when you were talking with them, they gave you any more detail. They didn't tell me anything about the timing for the subcommittee meeting. Because usually they ask us to
Yeah,
attend once
usually,
we're,
usually they tell you. I mean,
yeah,
I know the town hall is November 20th. That's
right,
on
the
the
town hall,
website.
but the
that's-
subcommittee sometime in between now and then, and
Yeah.
It's usually like at Greenbrier, right? Or
yeah. With my luck, it'll be November 4th or 5th because I'm out of town that weekend.
I'm out of town for the 20th. So I will not be.
Yeah, usually there's the subcommittee, we go to, you know, we're asked to go to that just so they can say, you know, here's the person and
Yeah.
we can waive. And then November 20th, we're usually asked to go to the town hall. And that's usually when, depending upon which caucus you're dealing with, they ask for signatures.
So that's when the signatures are due by then?
No, it's usually when you stand at the table and try and
Right.
get everybody to sign. If it's the same as it was 4 years ago, they're gonna
8 years
put,
ago, right? Oh, no, 4,
Four.
pre-COVID, sorry.
4 years ago, they
Feel like
put the onus on
tracking.
us to try and get all the signatures. The caucuses before that took the onus on themselves, the
Oh.
people on the committees to get the signatures. So which way they'll go this year.
And 2 years ago, it was all virtual. because
We
of
still had to get
COVID.
signatures.
Yes, well, you still have to get, but the town hall is virtual. So.
Yeah,
But
you
not
had, you had to come to the library if I remember to get the signature.
No, I came to your house. remember?
actually can't get any signatures here.
You stood outside and didn't get signatures here, if I remember. I thought you
No, I
guys,
came to your houses and I
No.
ran around people's houses and
Yeah.
got signatures. It was like selling Girl Scout cookies.
yeah,
Everyone's like kids' basketball games with the clipboard.
Yeah, it was,
difficult.
yeah, hopefully the town hall made it so much easier.
Mhm.
So hopefully that's what happens this year. too. You can count on my signatures, my signature.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the town hall is the weekend before Thanksgiving.
The 20th, yeah.
It is.
Is it on, what day of the week?
That'd be
Oh, yeah, it was
Sunday.
a Sunday,
It's
right?
usually,
Saturday or Sunday?
usually
Sunday.
Saturday or Sunday.
Sunday.
And that, the 20th.
The 20th is a Saturday.
That Saturday is the Illinois versus Michigan game, if anyone's interested. Yes.
All these sports overlap now, so it's very hard
It
to
is
keep
very,
track.
very.
Yeah.
It's true.
Oh, and Sharon is out of town until the afternoon on Saturday, so if anyone's wondering, she will not be participating Saturday because she can't make it. She said her plane gets in the early afternoon, but by the time she would get
Yeah.
back, she wouldn't be able to attend. So we'll miss Sharon, in case she watches. All right, the next item on the agenda is unfinished business. Hannah, would you like to have a little discussion about the updated scenarios for the levy?
We are still estimating that a 5% levy increase would be good for the library. But on the second sheet in the levy packet, I showed what a 3% levy increase would look like, a 4% levy increase, and then what we would like is the 5.3. At, last month's meeting, it was, you guys all agreed that an increase was warranted. It's just a matter of what you feel is fair.
Goal of voting.
Anyone have questions for Anna about the 3, 4, or 5.3% total levy increase based upon what we think we need? Based upon the audit report with the funds increasing, I mean, we're in pretty good shape, but we know that we have all this inflationary pressure. So I think we kind of got a difficult decision. Anybody have thoughts? Barbara, any thoughts?
No, just a question. How do other governing bodies determine? It is, I don't know the process. Do we compare, do we think of ourselves as higher or lower, or does it make any difference?
Yeah, I mean, we're usually not trying to pin ourselves based upon others in this particular aspect, because we're more focused on, what are our immediate needs and, kind of looking at the budgeting and how it's gonna impact the budget and, I mean, that's usually the focus is this is gonna drive the budget. And so making sure that we're in a position that, we're not leaving ourselves short for
Right.
the budget and having to cut some line items in the budget when we get to that in the next phase of the, process.
I was in a business managers meeting or finance managers meeting at the end of September, and most libraries are going to be asking their boards for a 5% tax levy increase. It's the maximum amount that can be asked for.
As a
and
district
with
library,
everything,
yeah.
with inflation and everything that's going on. Most libraries said they were going to ask for 5%.
2 weeks ago when I was at my directors meeting, oh no, it was only last week. Last week when I was at my directors meeting, that was still the plan, and some of them had by then already brought it to their boards, so some boards had already voted to do that. But of course, a lot are doing it now and next month, so it's definitely in flux. But that's certainly something that we could easily gather information if the board would like to see what percentage increase the other area libraries are planning for their levies or have already voted on.
When you say that based on the audit, we're in good shape, like, and the question being, do we really need it, but this is, or is that really necessary? But those projections were based on what we think is necessary, right? Like audit aside, I guess is what I'm saying. So I'm trying to understand how that's, like, how that's connected, you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I just talked about how cash has gone up in the past year. And the key concern with the levy is what's our cash position gonna be, in the next cycle, because this is gonna drive how much potential cash we get based upon, the taxes being paid. Um, I think Barbara's got a good question, but I'm be more focused on not libraries that are near us, but what's the park district gonna do, or the school district's gonna do, the other governing bodies that appear in our same tax bill, because that's gonna be more of a driver of, how it impacts the community. And, to the extent the community starts seeing financial difficulty and you start seeing an increase in the number of taxes that aren't paid, and that's gonna trickle down to us.
How does, like, how much does inflation, like, factor into this as well? Like, should we be looking at those kind of projections also? Cause I know it's just sort of crazy right now, right?
Well, I mean, we increase certain lines that we see are going, need to increase like software and.
Yeah.
And then software, equipment rental and maintenance, salaries and wages, we've tried to take inflationary.
So you do that at the line items that are most impacted by.
Correct,
inflation.
correct, but then
Yeah.
we also, yeah, so we do try to look at that as we're going through the analysis and try to go through it line by line. Um, Insurance will have an inflation impact.
So just in the scenario is 5.3%, but we're asking for 5.
No, it would be 5.3, sorry, I
5.3,
rounded
okay.
it, sorry. Insurance.
Yeah, so inflation is baked into these estimates based on the items that have the most impact.
And also staying in line with the fund balance policy set by the board, which says that we should have at least 6 months, which we do, in the fund balance.
Anybody have opinions on the range and what they think they're comfortable with or not comfortable with? And the reason I'm asking is because we kind of need to be positioned next month where we can make a motion and vote. So,
I don't think it's an opinion. I think it's what's the need. I think if Anna is comfortable making a recommendation or Kate, whatever, based on what we're gonna need, my opinion is go for a high, but what do I know? So I would suggest that it,
well, part of it is an ask too. I mean, because Anna's working from the budget forward. And if we said, well, 5.3%, meets all your needs, meets all your asks, but because of the relative significant increase in the economy, you know, we could say 4% is what you need to make the budget meet, as opposed to hitting all your asks. And that means that she'd have to go back and look at the budget, figure out where does that, you know, reduction come out of. So there is some leeway in there. In prior years, we've tried to keep it, you know, small when the markets were going well and we weren't really worrying about all the inflationary pressure. I mean, that's to me the biggest issue that we're worried about, and the biggest unknown, because we know the pricing is going up. And we know that, you know, everything that we're doing is gonna cost more next year than it did last year. Whether it's materials, whether it's services, you know, whether it's construction projects. The bonds, I don't think we have to worry about the bonds, do we, Anna? They're fixed.
Yeah.
So our debt service is pretty in good shape. But, you know, as we build up reserves and as we look at future projects that come out of some of these reserves, if we don't have the reserves to meet the needs for the projects, you know, bonds issuances in the future are gonna be a lot more expensive. So that's really the issue that we're kind of focused on, is making sure that we keep the cash coming in a way where we don't have to go out and try and get a bond issue.
Not getting so much cash that we're sitting on a pile of money that isn't being
Used.
as well, right? It's the fine balance of habit. Like I know the library that collected funds for 19 years to build a new library, which to me is not appropriate. Like that's the taxpayers' money, and if you're gonna take it in, it has to be for a dedicated reason that you have, that you know you're gonna need within the next few years.
Right.
So,
And the way we usually address that is if we overestimate this year, then next year, you know, we barely uptick.
Right.
So that we're kind of evening out from year to year.
And I think because of the uncertainty, that's what makes me a little more comfortable with leaning more towards the high end, because of the uncertainty of like inflation and everything and the cost, knowing that we are going to then go down if we have too much cash. Like we've done that before. So
Yeah.
I think to your point, Jay, I would also be interested in seeing, like, we don't probably normally compare to the village and the park district, but because we're going a little higher than we used to, it would be interesting to know that. And then maybe just the difference between 4 and 5.3, like what would get not done? Unless everyone feels that we should just err towards the 5.3 and not even kind of make that determination.
I mean, Anna, do you have the ability to answer that question now? On the 4 to the 5.3, you know, how that's gonna impact? the
Well,
budget?
I mean, when you look at these numbers, it's $120,000, right?
Mhm.
I mean, we would figure it out. I mean, I can't tell you exactly where I would take it from, but we would figure it out.
Just make sure that I'm understanding this. The difference between the 4 and the 5.3 is $120,000.
Anna
It doesn't sound
projects
like that
based
much.
on,
Much at all.
No.
no,
Yeah.
based on past spending, and past increases, like with, for instance, insurance. It's always possible that the insurance will be higher, and then we have to look when we're doing the budget in other areas, or it could end up being lower, and that means we can put more towards the capital fund. So it, you know, the numbers are not set in stone, but Anna's ability to estimate based on past trends has usually proven pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Um,
And the big issue that's the unknown in terms of what could be an outlay, if we have another steam humidifier boiler issue where
Right.
we have to move up on,
right.
you know, the
Exactly.
building plan and, you know, incur an expense that we're expecting to be in the next year.
But the CIF fund is properly funded.
Mhm.
And because we put excess funds from the operating fund in there, like those types of projects, if they do come up, we have funds to do that. So, and that's why we showed you the facility plan last month, to show you that with, you know, the estimates were, with what we think is gonna happen, we have projects in there. And, you know, the steam boiler happened, but we also pushed off like a landscaping project. So, you know, it all works itself out.
So this is more about cash on hand, salaries, and things that we have to purchase, like insurance,
Correct.
software. Like,
Yes.
those, like, obviously salaries and insurance, like you have to pay for, like maybe we wouldn't be able to buy or upgrade software potentially, or not hire new roles potentially. I mean, that's one of the buckets you would take it, from, right? It's not about the stability of the building.
Right.
But keep in mind, we just had our compensation policy where we wanted to be in the upper, you know,
Yeah,
end
I
of
mean,
the compensation range, so we gotta plan for that as well.
it's not as much money when you, I mean, when you think about the 1% increase at 120,000, I would have expected like more,
Yeah,
that
it
it
sounds-
to be more.
So small, but it's what I have to remember, that 120,000 is a very small percentage of the overall budget. That's what I think is sort of throwing me now, like it's.
Someone mentioned 5% being the upper end. Where does that come from?
That's not us, because we're not a separate
So-
taxing district.
Most, 60% of the public libraries in the state are library districts. So they actually levy their own taxes, whereas we're a village library, which we are levied through the village. And because Northbrook is a home rule community, and because we lump our funds with the villages, which is significantly larger than ours, if we were a taxing, a library district, and we went above a 5% increase, you have to do what is called a truth and taxation meeting where you explain and give the community a chance to come in and talk. And then in counties that are tax capped, they can't go above that unless it's new growth. And the new growth, I mean, we have been seeing development here. So that's where the 5% comes in, is if we are a district. Now even though we are, a village library and Northbrook is home rule, we don't ever take advantage of that and be like, oh, well, yeah, we could do a 10% increase just because we can do that. That's not something that we would do. It would be fiscally irresponsible. And even if we did do a higher increase, in order to have that 5% cap, if the village wasn't home ruled met, it would have to be 5% for us plus the village's budget. So that, yes, but it is something that we, do, we want to be very mindful of because even though we're only like 3% of people's taxes, it still has an impact.
Yeah.
So I was just curious, because previously we've done 6 and 7 before, so.
Yeah, we've had high
Yeah.
before. Um,
So,
Usually in years where we're taking out bonds.
Yeah, oh, got it.
go ahead.
so in that context, looking at the villages or the park districts levy, their budgets are completely different to begin with. So 5% of their budget, is that really analogous? Is it really relevant, is what I'm asking?
Yeah, I think it would be because think of it this way, the village is going up, 6% of whatever their budget is or whatever their levy is, and we're going up 5%, it's pretty much 5% across the board. You're gonna have the tax bills having to increase, proportionally. And so, the reason I bring that up, we're in an election cycle, right? What brings people out from their houses and showing up at town halls and yelling and screaming? The tax bill. And, thanks to Cook County, no one has seen their tax bill until probably right around the time that we're gonna be showing up at town hall. I mean, it's true. It's just, that's the way Cook County's been this year. They're
Yeah.
behind. People are gonna get hit with 2 tax bills pretty close together.
Sure.
And that's gonna, it's a big issue with this election just generally in November, and we're gonna be, the same time period.
And then add in the fact that village relies heavily on sales tax, and we've seen while the
Sales tax is down because Northbrook Court is dead,
yeah,
and they haven't been able to replace it very well.
correct. So that's something else where they might have to increase the levy in order to make up the funds for that.
And that would be an ongoing thing even.
Yes. Yeah, this village has always had the good luck of having Northbrook Court fund
Yeah.
a lot of the tax burden. Um,
It's the information we have, I just wanna, like, right now, I'm comfortable with the percent that's presented, given how much, the elements we're talking about is contributing to the operating budget. And knowing how much inflation the number actually is in those categories, I think we're actually on the conservative side. I know that, Anna has done her due diligence, so I'm personally comfortable with the number that's proposed.
I would agree.
Are you looking at me?
No, I'm looking behind you because I think I heard.
Oh, I said I agree with what, I concur with what Jamie said.
Okay. Stacy, you've been pretty quiet.
I agree. I actually was gonna agree when Abby spoke a few minutes ago that the opportunity to correct in future years as needed makes me even more comfortable with it, that it's the right move in this moment, and then we can adjust moving forward.
Barbara, you've already said you're pretty comfortable with it. Okay. Abby,
I think, I'd rather err a little bit on the higher side, given the uncertainty, knowing that we can adjust next year. And I know we will because we have done it before.
yeah,
I have, just because the village needed to put together levy documents for their board meetings and they have to, so I have given them the high number because I figured if we were gonna go lower, it would just be easier. I have not received any comments on them getting our high number, so it is not it hasn't,
There's no shockwave.
right. They haven't come back and said, oh my gosh, like you're totally
Crazy.
throwing us.
with,
off
with,
plan."
with the new staff at the village, I mean, do you think you would have heard about it pretty quickly?
Yes. I mean, Ivana and I, we do talk, so if she had an issue, she would have let me know.
I didn't know if there was, a little bit of a lag between the time she gets it and the time she gets feedback.
No, by now, I mean, I gave it to her after our September meeting so that she had the time to process it and give it to their board. Yeah.
Well, and I think we're probably pretty well set to approve 5.3 next month.
Do you want us to get information from the other taxing bodies
I think
or?
it'd be helpful just to have, so
Okay.
we know.
Okay. We can reach out and get that information.
So on the agenda next month, so everybody please be here, is approving the levy.
From 17th?
Yes.
No, I'm in town. I have a kids concert that.
I'm gonna guess that it is the 15th or so,
It's the 17th.
17th, that's close.
You were right. So. Week before, Thanksgiving.
All right. Next item on unfinished business is 8.2 2023 closing schedule.
So this is a,
I was gonna say Kate's gonna present, but go ahead, Kate.
this is a follow-up from last month. I had updated the holiday closing schedule and also included some information about what other libraries are doing. I did add in a New Year's Eve and day after Thanksgiving as potential additional days closed based on the holiday closings of other libraries where we're with a couple libraries that are on the lower end, certainly not by like a massively huge amount. And Abby had some questions and suggested getting kind of like a broad overview of all of the different paid days off for staff, which I got a lot of the data, but because I've been at ILA all week, I was not able to get all of the data normalized because some people count in hours, some in days, some in weeks. So I could give you some estimates for that of like, generally speaking, our vacation policy is, the holiday is what you've already seen. The vacation time, generally is similar, although, about a third of the libraries give part-time staff vacation and 92% and 97% give it to full-time and regular part-time. We're pretty on par with where everyone else is. There are a handful of libraries, I would say maybe like 5 or 6 that do go all the way up to 5 weeks of vacation. Most libraries are between 2 and 4, depending on years of service. And then for sick time, we are towards the higher end. Most libraries range between 10 and 15 days. We're at 15 days for full-time. At this point, about 50% of the libraries are giving part-time staff sick. So we're now in that bucket as of last January, and our regular part-time sick is pretty much the same. In terms of the personal days, which is the next agenda item, but just so you can kind of think of these.
Can we keep them separate for a moment?
Yes, sorry,
Because let's talk,
the holiday one.
let's focus on holiday first, then we can come back to it, because
Got it.
we're giving a lot of information, and I think we're mixing issues a little bit, so I want to
Fair.
focus first on the holiday schedule, and again, this is for 2023.
Yes, and I did put in there a couple dates for changing for this year, which again, the board can just say, no, we're gonna keep everything the same. We can, if you want to add the dates for New Year's and day after Thanksgiving, I'm suggesting adding them for this year, but also if you prefer and want to add them but don't want to do that until next year, there's any number of possibilities.
I'd like to have, we can just keep, if you don't mind, discussion on the holiday schedule first. And I will start because this year is a little contentious, I think, maybe because it's a short notice, not to the staff, but to the public. And we're talking about Thanksgiving in a month. But having said that, I am comfortable with the idea of closing the Friday after Thanksgiving. Looking at your memo here, Kate, you estimate 150 patrons on the day. So it's not like you're telling us there's high demand and high usage on that day. Yes, we will get feedback. Yes, we'll get people complaining because it's a change. But I think that is a day that I can get behind closing because most of the world is off and closed on that day. New Year's Eve, I'm a little less comfortable about for this year because I don't know from my personal perspective how we're going to get buy-in necessarily from the community. I think that's a day that people are more likely to be here because it's just the middle of still the winter break. It's, this year it just happens to fall at a time when people are going to be coming back into town because school starts pretty quickly, the following Tuesday. And New Year's Eve is what, Sunday night?
Saturday.
Is it Saturday night?
Saturday night is New Year's Eve into Sunday. Because, yeah,
Yeah, Christmas is
right?
Monday.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah. And so New Year's Eve to me is a little more tenuous. We normally close early. But having said that, if there's support for it, I don't have any objection to the concept. Next year, with having a year's advance notice, I don't see as much of an issue because I think now it gives staff the opportunity to make sure that it's publicized, people know ahead of time, it's not a shock, and I think we'll be able to garner buy-in that way, or at least educate the community as to what the expectation will be. And I think, I have no problem with staff having those days to enjoy them with families and to spend time, like most of the country with their families. So I guess I'll open up for others to chime in and how they feel in terms of the holiday schedule. I think it also is, we should be in line with the other communities. If we're going to try and hire at the higher end of the scale and trying to be competitive for attracting staff, for us to not be giving the same holidays as the rest of the library community puts us at a disadvantage in that respect, because I think people do pay attention to that. I know there are some corporations that don't close on Thanksgiving. I wouldn't want to work for them.
That's starting to change though. Like Walmart just said they're closing on Thanksgiving.
Oh, are they? Oh, good.
Which is a big deal.
Yeah, for
Well, I was
Walmart.
thinking like Walgreens, the corporate is open Or it was, it has been open on
Oh,
Oh,
really?
corporate?
Yeah.
On Thanksgiving?
the day after.
Oh,
Oh, interesting.
yeah, there's just still a smattering here and there.
But we'll go around the table and everyone else can chime in and share their thoughts.
My, my thought is, I'd always like to ask the question in terms of the impact on the community. And when I look at something like Staff Development Day, is that something that we have to close the entire library? Can it be, can you do it in groups? I don't know. I don't know what, but I think if we're going to be as responsible as we can and not close the library, if we think that the holiday is more important, then maybe a staff development day isn't a closure. I don't know. But I feel an obligation to represent how the community uses the library when we make these decisions.
Does that mean you're for the closures or
I'm sorry.
does that mean you support the 2 extra days or?
I think that if you're going to travel anywhere, if you're going, especially for Thanksgiving, I think that it makes sense, and I think there's more bang for the buck, if you will, rather than a staff development day. I think the community could understand that, make sense of it rather than a staff
You're
development
saying,
day.
you're suggesting a trade.
Yeah, and I can address a little bit of the thinking behind staff development day. But the concept has been that in order to get the staff to participate, have the staff to have the opportunity to participate, they can't be working and participating in, seminars and development, wherever activities are being planned for that day if they're working. And so that was the concept. And it, otherwise, puts this, whoever's planning it in the position of having to find alternative days for those who are working on the day, the development day, so that they can receive the training in another time.
And security training, I don't know what that is.
So Kelly handles our security training. It provides, there's a wide variety, but Kelly can talk about some of the trainings we've done and what we have planned for next year.
Yeah, so we have set aside those times to focus on things like fire drills, tornado drills, what to do if there's a lost or missing child. That's usually one of the late open days, is to kind of run through drills when we are not open to the public. But then the other 2 tend to be more timely topics. So the mental health first aid training and certification that we did in March, we were closed that day. The entire staff was able to be trained and certified in mental health first aid. And we try to sort of look at the landscape. Our most recent one was a late open where we focused on intellectual freedom and book banning and how to address those issues. And again, that's something that staff at all levels are experiencing. So to be able to have that training where we were all together getting the exact same knowledge and talking points and background was really helpful. It was also something we were able to record. So now staff can watch that as part of their onboarding process as well.
And so that's staff development.
It is, and focused on safety and security.
Um, 2 questions about that. Does every member of the library attend that? The staff training?
By and large, I mean, there's folks that are absent for
Okay,
various
but
reasons,
everyone is
but
invited to.
Oh,
correct? Okay, and expected to. Okay, got it.
Typically on our official staff development day, we usually get about 90 to 95% attendance. It's usually if people, like we have people that have other full-time jobs that take the day off to come in for the training.
One thing that Kelly didn't mention on the security training is we have had like active shooter training on the security training day, where they needed to have the building closed so that they can set up the scenarios and, have the staff go through a drill where they're locking down and,
All that I'm saying is that it's, I think, better off being framed as a professional development because you see security training and you go, what is this? But I still think that, it's called picking and choosing. Because I think if you're gonna take the holiday long weekend route, then something else has to be traded, because I think it's too many days.
How does the library, you don't have to close on election day?
We do not.
You do not.
We do make it a point during, well, when the village was an early voting place, that we would, in the before times, we would pay attention to like not having any large programs during those times, because parking would get quite gnarly, but other than that, that was the only thing we've really had to consider.
Jamie, do you?
Oh, I also have a question. So for Easter, why are we the only one that's not a paid holiday and everyone else is?
We never have been, and I also feel, I mean, I know we pay for Christmas, because pretty much everyone in the country does, but given that we have a much more diverse community in terms of the different religions celebrated here, it feels not great. And Sundays aren't a day that everyone's on a rotation, so it isn't quite the same as like Thanksgiving, where it's like, oh, most people are. Yeah, so Sundays, it's like, oh, you might work one Sunday a month. Now, we do have some people that work every Sunday, like our security monitor is here every Sunday. But in general, it isn't, it doesn't really have an impact on staff. And I think if we're gonna do that, I would rather look at doing something for Yom Kippur, for Rosh Hashanah, because it just feels a little too focused on one religion then, and that doesn't feel great to me.
I agree.
So,
Yeah, I agree.
I can get behind the 2 additional days hesitantly. I really, really prefer not to go with the closing the library route. I would rather pay people or give additional vacation days for the staff aspect things. Because kind of along the lines, yes, we are a community, but we are also serving the community. Like day after Thanksgiving, I often take my kids to the museum. In a lot of ways, I think the library very much in the same line as the museum. In the way I expect it to be open. That's just my perspective, like when I look at it. Like I said, if I can get behind it, but with reservations, I prefer more creative ways in terms of closing early, cutting down services, or like I said, pay people or give them additional days off than closing the library.
I agree. I would say for New Year's Day, I would, for New Year's Day, obviously would be a closed, but New
national,
Year's
yeah.
Eve, doing an early closure would be one way of doing that,
and that's what we've done in the past, just so I
Yeah.
should have put it on there. We usually close at 3 o'clock
yeah.
on New Year's Eve.
Because I think also with the library, it's one of those things that if people know it's gonna be closed the next day, I think people tend to show up the day before it's gonna be closed, so.
I guess, but I was thinking
yeah.
about the Thanksgiving thing, I guess that, but then Saturday you're open. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it's like
Saturday,
I can
Sunday.
kind of, yeah. I
Right,
can
exactly,
Get,
there's
get
still,
over it, but
right.
yeah,
I would agree with that.
right. Like it's not the.
So I don't think the security training, there seems to be a lot of it when I first looked at this, and maybe it's also, but when you explain it, I understand it, it's not like it's the staff aren't here for it. I think it's just the term security training, I don't think is accurate, so, but now
We
that I
can
understand
change
it.
that language
Right,
very
it's-
easily.
now that I understand what it is, that makes more sense,
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's essentially 2 full days of security training, Kate, because you have 2 half days and 1 full day.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, it's 2 days.
Oh, okay.
you have any other thoughts? Or
I would think, yeah, I think I would be more in favor of a closure on the New Year's Eve. And I can sort of see it both ways for the day after Thanksgiving. I'm not sure, I'm not sure how, many people use the library that day. I would think it would be pretty low on that day,
It's
but
$150.
yeah, so.
Based on past usage, obviously, I can't predict the future, but yeah, that was.
I do think, making these changes for 2023 would be easier, than 2022. I don't have a problem with the day after Thanksgiving. I think that, I know we're not the same as like, you know, corporations or, retail stores, but a lot of places are still closing on Friday, so people are probably getting more comfortable with that. And also, it's always a Thursday and a Friday, so then we know we're open on the weekend on Saturday and Sunday for people to come in. The thing about New Year's is for, you know, people that work full-time during the week, if New Year's Eve and New Year's Day falls on a Saturday, Sunday, and like you're not able to get into the library on a weekend, then you have to wait till the following weekend, right? Like, I guess what I don't like is a scenario where it would be closed on a Saturday and Sunday. And that's my reservation about New Year's Eve. Cause I think a lot of people, you know, tend to reboot your OS at the operating system at the end of the year. You wanna go in and get all of your books about whatever.
you said it wasn't really starting the resolution.
But yeah, right, you gotta get an early start with the resolution, and I always say I reboot my OS too. So, that, I don't know, we didn't get stats on New Year's Eve day, did we? I don't remember, we did, sorry.
Yeah,
I saw the 150 for Thanksgiving.
Oh, they were about the same. It's
Oh, they
about
were?
150 as well, yeah. So, when I ran the numbers, it was practically the same. I think one came in at like 146 and one came in at like 152 on average, so.
Okay. So, I mean, knowing that it's not a high usage day, I'm a little more comfortable with it. I just know for like my own, I guess a lot of people are on, you know, holiday. And maybe they're off anyway, but I don't like the idea of it being closed on for a full weekend, I guess, as someone who works Monday through Friday. So, yeah. But if it's low usage, I don't know, like, can't really do like a cost benefit analysis of that, but I don't know. But I think 2023 is Thanksgiving Day, yeah, for sure, day after.
I think doing it for 22, I think we're really cutting.
I
it
just
too
wish we
close.
were a couple months before.
Yeah. I think some people are gonna be like happy to have the day off. Other people are gonna be like, well, if you had told me this 6 months ago, I would have made different plans. You've made coordinated things with family. I know our family starts arguing about holidays,
That sounds
like
fun.
in July. So,
Just one more thing, in sort of in favor of closing on both of these days is we are definitely at the low end of holidays. And my question about the overall PTO time, sorry, I call it PTO, time off outside of holidays is if we're pretty much average comparatively, and then we're low on holidays, then we're low overall. And that was what I think I wanted to understand. So if
And
that's,
we're average in vacation and sick. We're average on personal time for full-time, low for part-time and regular part-time.
so we're average to low in
Yeah,
general.
yeah.
So what I
Yeah, except I should say sick time, we're average to high.
But sick time is like, let's hope people are only using that if they are actually sick.
Yeah,
in which
right.
case I don't,
Yeah.
I'm not really considering, that's not a planned vacation, right? So I'm taking
No,
that off.
no, it should.
So if our PTO time is average to low, then we are low on holidays.
Yeah.
So with that said, and the fact that there's only 150, then I guess I would be in favor of closing both days, but I would prefer it to be in 2023 because, but I think, you know, we're on the low end, so we're not even, this would basically put us at the median, with, you know, the average 10 closures. We're not even high.
You had talked about maybe closing early. Being open on New Year's Eve.
What we
closing early.
previously did was we were open until 3 p.m. And then staff were given 2 hours of paid time to use.
That it, Abby?
Yeah.
Okay, Stacy.
I'm comfortable closing for both, but again, looking toward the next year, I think in addition to elevating our profile for people who are searching for jobs and how we compare, going back to last month's conversation, I think there's a real benefit to staff to not work at times when other people aren't working, because then you come back to a clean slate instead of having a day off. And so that little mini break, if we can do that, because we looked at like a whole winter break closure last month, but I think these 2 little mini breaks achieve sort of what we talked about last month and also give people the benefit of time and space away. And the year's notice gives them time to avoid family fights about where they're going for Thanksgiving.
I mean, they don't have to tell their family that those are.
Sorry, I gotta
If
work.
They don't want
Just
to.
have a couple of meetings. Their families all
Oh,
know.
you're right.
They're all watching.
But to put it differently though, Kate, if people, staff were looking at these days and saying, oh, how can I use them? You know, if we close for Thanksgiving this year on this short notice, it's not giving them really that much more opportunity to plan to travel. Because most people by now, you know, decided or not decided they're traveling this year. You know, for those who are traveling, it maybe takes off some of the pressure of when do I have to get back? But I don't know, for those who aren't traveling, it gives them the opportunity to say, oh, now I can travel.
Yeah, I think it creates more headaches this year than, um, and I'm still, I wonder if there are people who would rather sort of have another day of vacation and come in and work on the day after Thanksgiving. The day after Thanksgiving, if they'd rather work that day where it is sort of quiet and then be able to have an extra day in the middle of July when they take their vacation. That's one way to think about it. I think some people prefer that
So
flexibility.
you're talking about a floating holiday instead of a closure?
Yeah, or just an extra vacation day, whatever it
Isn't there
is.
something in
Which we're
here
gonna
though
get,
that people
yeah, we're
said
getting
they
to that
prefer
later.
closures? There's something, people said they prefer
Yeah.
closures to floating holidays, right?
Yeah, the preference was for closing where no one would have to cover. And then the second preference was for increased either vacation or personal time. There was a strong sentiment towards, you know, like, hey, you know, like one person said like, hey, I feel like my vacation time is pretty good, but, you know, maybe we could give more to some of like the part-time people. And so I think more on your point of like, it depends on who,
Right.
like, but I do think that staff would, honestly, if offering more time, whether it's a paid closing or personal time or additional vacation, is a benefit anyway, if you look at it. Would ideally we add a couple more holidays and also maybe figure out a way to do a little bit more in other areas? Sure, but anything is gonna be a benefit, so.
I also think you'll have less public pushback from the public if you don't do anything for this year. I think that's, yeah.
Well, I think Stacy's point is well taken also in that if people are accustomed to, in most workplaces, having the day after Thanksgiving off, or I think it has a little benefit to that as well, in saying that I too can do a long weekend, or I can travel now, or I am.
Yeah.
Okay, so the question comes, do we have any emotion here? I mean, it's been mixed a little bit here. Because I'm really feeling that for 2022, the sentiment is we don't want to change at this point in time. And so Barbara, you're shaking your head, yes. Jamie, I think you already said you don't want to add additional days off for 2022, I'm talking.
Yeah.
Maura,
I would agree. I think closing early on the
New Year's,
New Year's Eve.
okay.
Absolutely.
And then Abby,
Yeah, I agree.
okay, so then I guess we're not gonna try and have a motion for 2022, but for 2023, is there a motion in favor of adding? I'm just gonna start with one, and then we'll go to the second question, but adding the day after Thanksgiving as an additional holiday. So Barbara, would you,
Thanksgiving, yes.
yeah, for 2023?
Are we talking about also an option of increasing personal days in?
There's gonna be discussion about that in a few minutes. I'm just right now trying to focus on the,
But if
Just
they're
the
given the
closure.
two options, I'd like to give two
Yeah.
additional personal days versus the library closure.
okay,
Did you get what I'm saying? Like, so
So
can I,
you
I'll
want
just
even-
what's it called? Refrain from the voting. Is it called refrain?
Yeah.
Not refrain.
Abstain.
Abstain.
Abstain, I'm
But
sorry.
maybe-
okay.
But
Well, you
maybe
can
we
vote no,
should-
because you'd
Oh.
rather vote yes there. I mean,
But
we're not
should
gonna
we
vote on
have the
that.
discussion?
But I wanna know what
first?
that is before I.
Yeah.
So I'll just not.
Okay, so we
Vote.
could table if you want the
Oh,
vote
I-
here. I'm not trying to
It's
take an
okay, you
official
guys
vote.
can vote.
No, I'm
Okay,
trying,
with-
I'm not trying to actually take a vote now. I'm
Oh,
just trying to get a
okay.
feel for what people's stances are.
Okay.
That's why I'm doing this part of the discussion. Maura, if we were presented a motion for the day after Thanksgiving right now, would you be in favor or opposed?
I would be in favor of it.
Okay, Abby?
Same.
And Stacy, okay, so Jamie, you wouldn't be necessarily because you want to pin, but everyone else is in favor for 2023, the day after Thanksgiving. For New Year's Eve day in 2023, again, just canvassing, not voting. Barbara?
I would be in favor of an early closing.
Early closing, not a day off, but early closing.
Correct. On New Year's Eve.
Okay,
I'm sorry to make this complicated, but I would like it not to be a permanent. I mean, I know we do this every year, but I kind of like the idea of like depending on the day where the
Day of
week
the week.
falls. Yeah,
okay.
and you know,
Makes
like
good
make
sense.
it. Yeah, it's still. So I guess it's a conditional yes.
Maybe that's something,
Yeah,
I-
like
something that we discuss every
Well, we
January.
do. Right. So
We discuss
right,
it
we
every
do.
year.
Yeah, so
Every
for
September, we do
2023,
the holiday schedule
So
for the
Yeah,
following.
it's a yes.
I understand what Jamie's raising that because once you
Yeah.
put it on there, next year you
Yeah,
look at it
you
and say, oh,
can't
it's the
take-
same as
you
last
can't
year.
take
It's-
it away.
Yeah, and people are like, they're
Take it away.
expecting this and they should know that this is
Right.
like a.
But we could say that, because I think the focus here is on weekdays, you'd be more comfortable with it than weekends. Is that correct?
That was,
Like
I think
more
that
like
was
the new
my
one you
comment,
said,
is that I didn't, if it had fallen both days on the weekend,
Well,
that I
right.
would love, but
So closing on a weekday, you could support, but closing on a weekend, you would be opposed, especially if
Yeah,
it's a Saturday.
closing on a Sunday, I'm okay too.
Okay, so just closing on a Saturday. Okay, I mean, because the policy, I
yes,
mean, we could
yeah.
approve it
Yes,
as a quote policy
yeah.
that for every day but Saturday.
but I think that's so difficult and inconsistent.
But also then that makes it hard to explain to people
It
how many
does.
holidays.
Yeah, like, we
you
close
have
every-
in them,
we
you know,
close every-
because It could be.
But you,
Except if
you
it's on-
could, just to kind of go down with what you, we could do it where on years where New Year's Eve falls on a
Oh, so
Saturday,
you-
they get a floating holiday.
Yeah, no, I.
Right,
I'm,
so
I'm
like
I'm
you
good
could,
with that, yeah. I'm
You
good
know,
with
like
that's
we
fine.
can,
Yes,
we can
yes,
adjust.
Yes, I'm good with that proposal for sure.
You already said yes. Abby, I think you
I
said,
think you just made me feel better about the whole Saturday thing, so.
Yep.
Stacy, what do you want for 2023 on New Year's
I'm
Eve?
fine with closing.
Okay, right, so I don't want to take a vote yet. Do I have a motion to table the vote
Motion to
until we
vote.
discuss the, what is this policy, the time off policy?
Leave accruals.
Leave accruals policy.
So moved.
Okay,
Okay.
is there a second? We'll do a voice vote. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Hearing none, seeing none, motion passes. All right, so we table that vote for a little bit. The next item on the agenda, Anna, you want to do a brief presentation here? The steam humidification for
We almost too much
project.
about boilers now.
More than you want to know. So we received 2 bids for the steam humidification replacement project. One from Effie Moran, one from Oak Brook Mechanical. Effie Moran is a Northbrook vendor. They do a lot of our maintenance work on equipment in the building. They were the lowest bidder. They understand the project. Color Design vetted them and is recommending that we go with the lowest bidder, which is Effie Moran, for $145,500. So I am asking, if we can accept that bid and move forward with the project.
Can I do a motion to accept the bid?
Unless, let me ask if there's any questions for Anna before we go to a motion. Okay. Abby, is there a motion to accept the bid?
There is in fact a motion to accept the bid. I'll second that motion.
Accept the bid from FP Moran, the amount of $145,500. Is there a second? I'll recognize Stacy for the second, since you got her hand up first. Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Christian,
Yes.
Mr. Glavender,
Yes.
Ms. Oliver,
Yes.
Ms. Unical,
Yes.
Ms. Yu,
Yes.
Ms. Young.
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. Congratulations,
you.
Anna. You're now the proud parent of a new.
Yeah. Congratulations.
All right, so the next item is new business, and the first item on new business is the discussion about the employee leave accruals. Kate is gonna review recommendations and get into some of the nitty gritty here. Kate, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Jay. As I had said earlier, what, half an hour ago, I had split these into two to make it a little easier, but understanding that there is, of course, some intersection between the two. So after last month's discussion, when the board had said, like, are there other things we could look at instead of being closed for the extended period of time? What, I surveyed staff to see like what would be of the most interest and if this or that, and kind of did some comparison voting. And one of the things that ranked very high was personal time after holiday closings. And so my recommendation is that we adjust the personal time for full-time staff and then add personal time for part-time and regular part-time. And so how that would look is that personal staff currently get 2 days, 2 personal days, and 1 floating holiday. I would suggest that we eliminate the floating holiday and just make it into a personal day, because it's one less bucket that we have to keep track of, which I'm always in favor of, as is Lori Prioletti, as is Anna. And give all full-time staff 5 days of personal time, which would equate to 35 hours. So that would be an additional 14 hours a week. That's very easy because full-time, everyone works the exact same amount. Regular part-time, which are staff that work from 20 to 28 hours, I'm also recommending that we give them a week, but for them, it would be based on however many hours they're budgeted. So if they're budgeted 20 hours, they would get 20. If they're budgeted 25, they get 25. And that, so it would essentially be prorated based on the budgeted hours that we have for them. And then for part-time staff, those are the staff that work 18 or fewer hours, but not substitutes who have no regularly scheduled hours. We would give them a week as well. Again, it would be based on how many hours they actually are budgeted to work each week. And I say budgeted hours because each, especially for part-time and regular part-time staff, if they're on the lower end, say they're like at 10 hours or 20 hours, they will sometimes fill in when people are off. And so they might work over the course of a year, additional 2 hours per week, but we budget them for this base amount, and that would be what we based all of the leave accruals on. With giving personal time rather than vacation time, personal time is given in one lump sum at the beginning of the year. When you have staff that are only working like 10, 15, 18 hours a week, if we were to give them vacation time and they were accruing it over the course of a year, it would be such a small amount each pay period that it would, you would essentially have to work for an entire year, and then you would get 10 hours to use the next year. So the personal time gives them the hours right off the bat, and has the added bonus from a financial perspective of we are not obligated like we are with vacation time to pay it out. So if someone started January 15th and we gave them 18 hours and they left on February 1st, we would just say, well, so much for that, right? And yes, there is of course the possibility of someone coming, starting, saying, oh, well, I actually need to take a week off in, my first 2 weeks, and then leaving. the odds of that are pretty minuscule, but I do want to acknowledge that that does exist. In surveying the other libraries, there definitely is an increasing trend to offer part-time and regular part-time staff more vacation and personal time. It was actually quite a bit higher than I was expecting. I was expecting it to be some, but for the part-time staff for vacation, like I said, about a third of the libraries give them vacation and about a quarter give them personal time. For vacation for regular part-time, we're pretty on par. Over 90% give it to regular part-time staff, and about 50% give regular part-time staff personal time. So I would say that in this regard, we are, I wouldn't say we're on a low end, but I would say that we are more like the 50th percentile, or a little bit lower. For part-time people, I think we're going to, based on the conversations I had at ILA this week with other directors, I think we're going to be seeing a continued increase in this area because of the current labor shortages that so many people are experiencing. So I will expect if we were to survey again in like 6 months or a year, that we'll see those numbers increasing as well. So we would not be charting a new, breaking new ground, undiscovered territory, what have you. But we would be on an earlier, kind of on an earlier side of the adoption. But it would be a really great benefit to be able to use as a lure to attract and hopefully retain part-time and regular part-time staff.
So.
I think Maura was
Oh,
gonna.
no, it's okay, go ahead, please.
I did not see you.
That's okay.
I'm
we're
not
good, so I'm not gonna
I
forget.
want to talk to her, so yeah.
So we're basically talking about an increase of 2 days for full-time
Mhm.
and the elimination of an administrative burden of an extra bucket.
Yep,
And then bringing us up to the, call it 50 to 75th percentile for part-time. We are still not like way above where everyone would be, but we're we're competitive. We're
Yes.
at above average.
yes, I would say that we would be firmly in the 75th percentage because I didn't see anybody else. And again, I didn't have a chance to fully review. Most people were giving typically about 3 personal days for those, or like about 3. So we would be giving a little bit more. So for the part-time and regular part-time. So
More
we-
than average.
Yeah.
Not more than everyone.
I mean, no, there's some other people.
Like, we're still not the top is what I'm saying, even with this.
We're not setting
change.
the trend.
We're not,
Yeah.
what the code call it bleeding edge. We're not.
Oh, yeah, we're not bleeding edge.
No,
We're cutting,
We're-
I would say cutting edge.
so 75th to 80th percentile, I'm just trying to like make sure that
Yeah.
we're not like, giving more than everybody else. This doesn't put us over the top, it puts us
Yeah.
competitive,
Very competitively.
very competitive. And for full-time, also
Yeah.
very competitive. But
And
feel
I
like
would
if
even
we-
argue with the full-time, because while most libraries do give full-time personal days, by adding on those couple extra, it kind of puts us a little bit over and closer to those libraries that are giving like 5 weeks of vacation, instead of the 4.
Would it be for the full time? What's the vacation and the PTO?
So it depends on how many years of service you have and what your position is. So it ranges for vacation from 2 to 4 weeks, and it goes up incrementally based on how many years. And then personal days, it's flat for all full-time. Everyone gets the 2 personal and floating holiday. So that
It's
is,
gonna be separate.
and it will be 5, because we have 3 currently and we'll add
35.
2 more.
So it doesn't matter what your tenure is, first year, 10th year, same.
I
Same.
guess I got confused, but you said you're taking away the floating holiday.
Yeah, so we're basically not
That's why
taking
you
it
only
away.
added
We're,
one then.
we're,
So instead of an increase of 5 days, it's really an increase of 2 days.
because currently we're gonna take the floating holiday, maybe don't think of it as eliminating. We're turning the floating holiday into a personal day. So they have 2 existing,
Oh, I
the,
see that too.
what was
existing.
formerly the floating holiday is now a third personal day and then the 2 additional.
I think
Yeah,
that
sorry,
is-
I know it's
The
confusing.
floating holiday is just a name only because it's still a day off.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I didn't know they had two to begin with. I
Yes,
thought it was-
yes. And that's for anyone that starts in the first half of the year. Anyone that starts in the second half of the year, this is our current practice, gets half that. So they would get one personal day. So they would get, 2.5 days as a full-time person. They'd get, 5 hours if they were a 10-hour employee.
Quick question for you, in the personal days and the floating holidays as we have it now.
Mhm.
What is the usage for the staff? Are we seeing that 100% of the staff are using all 3 days?
So because it's a pain to track all of the buckets, when Anna and Ann and Lori work on payroll, they ask staff to prioritize using those days first so that we
So
can
they're
then,
they're used 100%, Jay.
but then we do have, I would say about, I don't know, maybe 10 to 15% of the staff, I want to say, that when we give the vacation reminder, the vacation accrual reminders throughout the year, that are in danger of losing time. We rarely have anyone lose any time, right? But like Anna and I are great examples of that, is that we're usually like, oh, you have to use this, otherwise you won't be able to carry it over because we have a max carryover. So, but that usually isn't, I think there's only a handful of times that someone actually loses
You
it.
just raised an interesting issue, which is the ordering. In terms of what is allocated as taken first. How does that, is that a policy that the first ordering is? You just described it, is they take the paid vacation and the floating holiday first before they take the vacation. Would that change if we're increasing the number of paid time off days?
Right. I mean, we haven't really
No.
talked about.
We would
procedurally.
encourage and change their time off to use their personal time and floating holiday.
Because it's use it or lose it. So
'Cause
everyone's
it's use
gonna-
it or
everyone's
lose it.
gonna take that first. Right, I mean, that's the thing.
I mean, we're trying to be nice to staff. I don't think they think about when they take time off that they have vacation time, a floating holiday and personal time. Like, they don't think
Yeah,
about it
just
like
think
that.
I
They
have
think about it
one,
as
yeah.
this whole bucket. We, Lori, Ann, and I try to make sure that they're using their time in the best way possible for them.
So there's no, no one who says your personal days have to be a day. You can't tack that onto a vacation. There's no. sort
It
of-
doesn't, it's not like that at all. You can take a personal day, a floating holiday, and then 3 days of vacation for the week,
Unless you don't have the vacation.
unless you don't,
Yeah.
but
For those who have maxed out the vacation. Right, so it's 4 weeks, you said. So those have 4 weeks of vacation plus 1 week under the policy of personal time off. I would think we would want them to take whatever vacation can't be carried over first, then personal time off, then vacation that can be carried over.
Oh, carryover. Where does carryover play in the rank of?
So you carry over 1 year because we do an accrual basis. So you essentially, the thought is for the first year, you're accruing all of the time and then you would use those 140
It's the
hours.
unused. So when you, at the end of the year, I didn't use a week of my vacation, how much of it can I carry over to next year?
you can't.
You can carry over up to 4 weeks, but you're accruing constantly. So it's,
So
I'm not
I think the
explaining
question
this
is,
right.
from a hierarchy of
expires
taking
at
it,
some
is it, if you have carryover vacation, do you take that and then your personal time?
You have to use your personal, because on January 1st,
Mhm.
you have 4 weeks of vacation and 1 week of personal time.
It-
And you
if
have,
you carried over
well,
the max
we're
amount.
just,
We have a
so
fair
then
number of people.
you
that
have a
don't carry
whole
over
year to
max.
use those 4 weeks
Right.
and a whole year to use those 5 days personal. We have them use the personal time first because they can't carry that over, and then we tell them to use, I mean, either way, let's say they got to the end of the
Obviously,
year.
they're gonna use 4 weeks Cause they have to use it this year and then they'll get another 4 weeks for the prior
Correct.
year. So you're
Correct.
almost like always accruing forward.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if they
Yeah.
get to if they get to December 31st and they haven't used a week's vacation, they're gonna lose it.
Don't we have to pay it out?
No,
No, you only have to pay it out if the person leaves the organization.
And only within that first year, only within a year. Well, no, only within.
So,
yeah.
that's why we tell
Well,
them to
it's
use
whatever their
personal and
balance
then they.
is.
Yeah.
So it is
Right, right.
possible for it. to
There are
be more
very
than-
few people that lose vacation.
Yes.
I'm in favor of the additional 2 days and changing the floating holiday to a personal day. And increasing it for the part-time and the other designations. Regular part-time. and-
Regular part-time.
Yes.
Yeah, if it helps, part-time is people that don't pay into the pension fund. Regular part-time are people that do pay into the pension fund. So that's how we divide them up because they're slightly different. I know it's confusing.
I'm in favor of what you proposed.
Others?
Same.
In favor.
Okay, so everyone seems to be shaking their head yes, but Jamie, let's get back to your earlier statement.
Yeah.
How does that play into now your thinking on vacation or closed holiday for Thanksgiving / New Year's Eve?
I mean, I was really, like, now is both of them, I mean, I'm definitely strongly in favor of the PTO, and that brings up the benefit, and I feel like that's the first thing people see is how many days they get off. But like I said, with the other one, I'm still in favor of, I'm good with, I can get behind it.
Okay, but are we talking Thanksgiving and New Year's or just Thanksgiving?
Both of them, yeah.
Right, so before we move to any votes, is there anything that anyone wants to have presented at the next meeting on any of these issues? Or do you want to have time to consider on the PTO policy? Or
I'm gonna present the formal policy though with the changes next month. I didn't update the policy, so that is what like the official vote would be on.
Okay.
Would be on changing the language in the employee handbook for that policy. So that will be brought next month
right, so we're not gonna take any vote this month.
for that one.
We will,
For which one? For the vacation?
For the accruals, yeah, for the personal time.
Okay, but we would be voting on the holiday closures. too.
Ideally, yes. And then next month, you'll also see, you're voting essentially just on what days the library is closing. Next month, I'll also update the policy, the personnel policy to say, these are added as additional, and I'll put in language about
Weird
the
Saturday.
Saturdays that I'm sure we'll talk about, but I'll maybe send that out well ahead of time so people can look at it if we want to try and, I could have some different words for that.
right, so I'm not gonna ask for any motion on the accruals, but I will ask if there is a motion to approve the 2023 closing schedule with both Thanksgiving, day after Thanksgiving off and New Year's Eve off, as opposed to close early,
For 23.
23.
Yeah.
Is there someone who wants to make the motion?
Oh, I'll make the motion to do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Maura. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Abby. This one, hold on a sec. We can do a voice vote according to my notes. So all in favor, please say aye. Anyone opposed, please say nay. Hearing no opposed and only aye, the motion has passed. So you have that?
So for 2023,
We
we had the
approved,
day after Thanksgiving and now New Year's Eve, fully off.
Correct.
yes,
Okay.
close,
With a weird Saturday rule.
right.
But we don't
Well,
have
I
to
don't
put
care
that in
about
there.
that.
That's
Don't- We
gonna
don't
go
have to worry about the Saturday rule. That's gonna be in
In
the
the
employee
policy.
handbook.
I'm just,
Yeah.
but this is for 2023.
Oh, right, right, this is
No
for
changes for
2023.
2022.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Try to make that new handbook and she's gonna be like,
That
kill me.
was her. So for the New Year's Eve.
Next item under new business is serving our public 4.0 review. Since Anna has left, Katie will give the discussion.
So, every year we're required to review serving our public. They used to do it where you only had to review one chapter, but now the state library has confirmed this year that every year we'll need to review the whole thing. So you're gonna see this every fall, something to look forward to. Um, and as you can see from what I included in the packet, we exceed in just about every category. There's a few things that we don't have in place, including a written succession plan, which was added as the most recent, with the most recent serving our public, we, in 2020, and it was like, oh, there's a pandemic, we can wait. And so that is something that is still on my list, so we definitely will get that done eventually. And then also some like facility upgrade things, which we have a plan for, it's just that they haven't happened. And then a new policy for the security camera usage, which is oddly specific in light of all the other checklists, but we don't have that because we're gonna do it as when we're doing the security camera upgrades next year. So we're gonna add all of that back in. So add that policy in during that project. So in general, really good, but I'm happy to answer any questions or go into detail on any of.
What do they mean by succession plan? Because it's not like this is a, private business where you can easily say that, the first vice president is, in line to replace the director if the
So,
director leaves,
yeah, so they're using succession plan differently.
Mhm.
What it really is a personnel crisis plan. So if I were to need extensive surgery and had to be out for 3 months,
Okay.
what would happen?
Yeah.
If Anna had to, be gone, if key personnel, that it would be very difficult to like have the library function. So it isn't just for my position, it would be for key positions throughout the library. What would happen for a short, long-term, or if there needed to be an interim situation, which we've done when managers have left, right? We've had the assistant managers serve in an interim capacity, so we have things in place, just not a written plan detailing what all of those look like and how all of that would work. But I have a template that I created for my second book, so I just
Wait.
need to write it for us.
Second book, you're working on a second book?
The second book I
That's
published
the
in
one that
June.
was just published.
Okay.
I just-
Well, I thought, that was the second.
Oh, sorry,
was the
yeah.
first.
Second
Um,
edition.
Not to put anyone on the spot, but Kelly, if Kate was unavailable for an extended period, would you be comfortable filling the void?
Yes, I would.
Yeah, I mean, I think you proved able when we had a situation in April/May. So,
Amsterdam and COVID.
So who can fill, if Anna's out?
You know, let Anna go. No.
Kelly, not to put you on the spot.
Yeah,
So
so,
help on that one.
yeah,
It'll
so
be like a group effort.
obviously,
Yeah.
when like Ann Keaton has been out previously as our staff accountant, and Anna can fulfill all of those duties. If Anna were to be out for an extended period of time, just like with Lori, it would be in our best interest, given the fiduciary responsibilities, to contract with an outside firm to come in on a temporary basis, because we do not have anyone else on staff. Like, could Kelly and I do accounts payable? Yeah, sure. But do you really want us doing that? And I mean, that's what Ann does, but like all of Anna's stuff, and we want to keep the internal controls strong, and having us do those will blur those lines in a way that I don't think any of us would want. So we would bring in, and there's plenty of great governmental accounting firms that many people use. They don't have an Anna, and so they use those. So I have a list of people that we could call and get pretty quickly. So yeah.
Well, following up on that theme though, I mean, if Anna were to come in and say, and not to put her on the spot because she's not here, but, I have decided that I want to retire in April. So
Right before the end
hypothetical.
of the fiscal year,
Yeah.
I would ask her if she would
Okay,
stay.
so hold on, let me finish. Do you have a plan as to be able to put in place a final replacement if given enough advanced? No,
Yes, of course, absolutely. One of the things we've also been working on over the past few years is creating written procedures for the tasks that people do in the library. So like Anne has a binder Anna hasn't printed her stuff out, but Anne's binder is like this big, detailing all of the work she does so that someone could come in and step in. My stuff isn't as fleshed out. Jennifer has a beautiful online database. We've been doing this in a lot of the departments as well. So we have that in place. And in terms of hiring someone, like if it was from now to April, yeah, absolutely. But also just even on a more immediate basis, would we be able to have everything in place tomorrow? No, but within a week or so, I would say that we could have things functional, not Anna level, but functional to be able to get us to pay bills and do the important things. Does that answer enough?
Yeah, you were more answering the question of if Anna gets hit by the bus tomorrow, whereas I was focused more on the, if we lost someone, I mean, we've got process in place
Yes,
to replace them. I don't mean lose them as in they just don't walk in the next day, but they
yeah,
come and give notice. We're gonna be in a position to pretty quickly be able to fill the position, as opposed to Brody.
yes,
Good job.
yeah.
Oh, good for him. Um, Anybody have more questions for Kate on the serving our public 4.0 review? Okay. The next item on the agenda is agenda building. So on the agenda building, annual per capita grant application to discuss, I guess, in November. We will vote on the fiscal year 24 levy. We will review the closed meeting minutes for the past 6 months. And then we will have updated personnel policies based upon some recent state law changes and based upon our vote today. Is there anything else anyone is wanting to add to the agenda or suggest for the agenda for November?
December, oh, you guys can just relax and enjoy yourselves.
Show here.
Don't forget that,
Come on in.
don't forget your day in the beginning of November to come in and do staff appreciation.
Jennifer very kindly said she was gonna remind us,
Yeah, would
which I
you-
wanted
yeah.
to say thank you for doing that.
Yeah,
I put
thank
it on
you.
my calendar, but I'm afraid.
I know, I don't.
Anyway, I don't know.
Can you also let me know about how many, if I have Sunday, I think I have
So I
Sunday.
did. It was around 25 people.
That's it? Oh my goodness, okay,
25.
thank you.
Then I have some.
And how
I
many
wasn't
days
sure
is
which
the
day it
normal day? Like during the week, how many people?
The highest day is typically Tuesday and Wednesday, and that ranges between 50 and 60.
Great, glad I put that down.
Just kidding.
You know how excited I am. Oh.
Right. So I will adjourn the meeting